Hi guys, it's Sarah Jane again. Welcome back to my channel. I've been having some issues. I did buy a new camera, and it was a really nice camera. My boyfriend Tony helped me out with it. This is Tony Portillo. But unfortunately, I'm struggling with importing the things from the SD card into my computer, into an editing software that works. So in the meantime, we did film a review for Solo, and it didn't go through. So we're just gonna do it again. So Tony and I went to go see Solo twice so far. We went at the outdoor, and we went in the theater AMC. So Solo's, in my opinion, Solo's a really good movie. There's a lot of interesting things. It really ties into who he was and how he came to be that reckless, mischievous person.
At least in the canon.
Yeah. Now, with the visuals and the stylistic approach, it does seem more Disney than Star Wars. I honestly think it's kind of a nice mix of the two. But there are some things in it that you can definitely tell Disney bought them out. So, yeah. What did you think?
I didn't think it was that bad, in all honesty. Though I do at least agree that they do need a little bit more work on it. Because I feel like the thing that they're missing out on is the fact that Legends, everything that was made before this new canon, basically had a big, massive world story. Because we all know, at least us Star Wars fans know, that all the events in Solo, and much like with what happened with Rogue One, there was a lot more to the story than just them getting all that done really quick and easy. They could have easily expanded out, like, at least with Rogue One, they could have expanded that out to, like, an actual 3-part episode showing everything, or at least a good chunk. Same thing with Solo, yeah, they may have showed him how he got to there, but then now we realize, like, wait a minute, that gangster he's talking about, at the end,
It's Jabba the Hutt.
yeah, and that's 10 years, and this is basically 10 years prior to that first episode, which means it's like, so, what happened in between? Like, we don't know anything else about that, so...
Yeah. So I guess we're gonna dive right into the film. So this is kind of where the spoilers start. So the film is it starts off with him in like a poverty-ridden type area, with his girlfriend. He actually had a girlfriend who he actually really cared about.
Yeah.
Yeah, her name's Kira. And he ended up stealing some hyperfuel
Coaxium.
called coaxium, to sneak past the guards and let him off of that planet to get to a better place. So him and his girlfriend could have a better life. Unfortunately,
That didn't turn out well.
he escaped. She didn't. A whole bunch of hell broke loose. He decided he was going to join the pilot forces for
The Empire.
the Empire and come back and rescue her once he was able to. Well, as we know, he got kicked out for having a mind of his own. He ended up going into the army. There was a mission. He ended up hanging out with a group of people.
Basically, he meets up with Tobias. He meets up with Tobias Beckett right there, who's, by the way, wearing a dead soldier's uniform,
Yeah.
which was pretty obvious once you saw like the blast marks on it. I was like, that's a dead man's uniform.
Yeah. But, you know, the only person that pointed it out was Han. So, of course, Beckett saw that as a threat and fed him to the beast that, for some reason,
Well,
the
see,
Empire had.
Well, the only
Turns
reason
out it was Chewie.
well, the only reason he was able to do that was because the soldier's uniform he was wearing was a high-ranking captain. So he was able to tell a lieutenant to, hey, take this deserter away, and they decided to throw him with the beast. And Beckett didn't say anything else after that. He just said, take this deserter away, and don't believe a thing he says, he's a liar.
Yeah. So there were some flaws in that, but I mean, I guess, yeah, high-ranking official thing, whatever. But Han got Chewie out. That's when they started to become friends. They caught up with the guy who was actually on his way to go rob something else.
More coaxium.
And get more coaxium. So they went. So Chewie and him caught up. The guy was impressed that he was able to get out and free the beast.
Well, I think only because Rio said that he does need more muscle. I think he was more interested in Chewie than he was in Han.
Yeah. So they joined in. They were going to get a cut. The whole plan goes corrupt. Rio dies. He's the pilot. He's like the pilot that's actually there. He dies, and then Beckett's girlfriend dies. All in the same mission. Because a band of
Marauders, pirates
attacked, and neither one of them ended up getting the coaxium. It actually all blew up. Then we find out that Beckett was actually doing the mission
for a crime syndicate known as the Red Tide to pay off some debts.
Yeah.
And we all know how the Red Tide is.
Yeah. So, for those of you who don't know, the Red Tide is just corrupt, dark, essentially like Empire-esque.
They're essentially like the Pikes in the TV show, or even the Black Suns.
Yeah. So essentially everything happens. Han and Chewie decide to stick with it and try to find a way to get more coaxium for him. They're being pressed to figure it out then and there, or they die. And along the way, once they go and visit, he finds his old girlfriend, Kira, and she's actually working with the Red Tide.
Though the way the movie made it sound like is that when they showed her mark on her hand, it looked like it was a slave brand, which we all thought because, well, crime syndicates have been known to use slave labor because they can, as we all know.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case later, but anyways.
Yeah, so she ends up working the mission with them to ensure that they get the coaxium. They end up robbing one of their alliances on Scarif.
No, not Scarif.
No, not Scarif?
No.
My bad, guys. The Pikes, you said?
Well, I don't remember the name of the planet. All I just know is that it was a Pike-controlled mining planet.
It was an alliance with them since they didn't know who Beckett, Solo, or Chewie were. They technically could go and do it without them knowing that they're robbing them of coaxium.
By the way, the actor who plays Vision is also the leader of the the Red Tide. So just throw that out.
It was very interesting.
He killed a political delegate. Right there.
Yeah, that's like the first thing we see of him. But so they end up, rescuing everything. They got Lando to come with because they needed a ship. So Han is betting with Lando, trying to get the ship, trying to win it. He doesn't quite win because Lando's always cheating. Apparently he has a card on his arm, like attached right under his sleeve, and no one notices. But
then we get to meet one of his most interesting characters, L3.
Yeah. So his sidekick is L3.
A robotic navigator.
Yeah.
With apparently a mind of her own.
Gee, we're sensing a theme here. So L3 is a very spunky robot who we're pretty sure her and Lando
had a thing of some sorts.
Because Lando did come out as pansexual. And the way that they were talking, and the way that L3 talked about him, like she sat down in the side chair and was like, "Oh, could you rub my
You need to do the thing with the circuitries, which we don't understand, but we get an idea.
It was a very
weird.
awkward comment because we're pretty sure we know what that meant. So when they go to steal the coaxium, she decides to free all of the robots.
By the way, it's unrefined, meaning that if it reaches a certain point, it'll blow up a lot quicker than just
the
being
coaxium.
hit.
Yeah. So, in the process of freeing all the robots and rescuing all the slaves, all three ends up getting caught in crossfire, and she ends up dying, which tears Lando apart. But as we know, Lando owned the Millennium Falcon. And when she died, he couldn't really drive, so he had Solo take the wheel. And that's how they got out of there. He drove devilishly, and he technically destroyed his ship.
Well, then again, it was through the Kessel Run, the infamous Kessel Run that he did in 12 parsecs. But, as he said at the end of it, not if you round down.
Yeah.
So, but it was crazy to see a gravity well of all things inside the TV, inside the movie and everything else.
Yeah. So it was kind of cool. They rescued it. They ended up running into the pirates again. The pirates explained why they were doing it. They were actually technically like the beginning of the rebellion is what I'm taking it as.
I'm not sure because the way episode 3 ends is that the leader of Alderaan starts getting an idea, and then he wants to go and set up another rebellion. Do keep in mind there are other cells that do rebellion but are not a part of the rebellion. Especially when I noticed one of the aliens in there was a part of I really do forget that guy's name. He was a part of that one group in Rogue One. He's literally that alien that notices Cassian shoot one of his guys, grabs him, and takes him over to I really need to remember his name. The guy that literally pulled out a breathing apparatus and then was talking and everything else, thinking that the pilot that defected was not a real thing.
Yeah.
So
I should probably let you guys know we're not like super fans. We don't know everything that happened in the canon comics. We don't know everything specifically like planets and names and stuff of certain things. We just really like the storyline. I actually started watching it to have something in common with a boyfriend in high school. So that was interesting, but I continued with it because the storyline was still pretty interesting, and I enjoyed it.
And as for me, my knowledge is basically just from the movies and whatever books and comics were available at our public library. So I didn't really get a chance to really read everything, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, continuing on, they come back. They have the coaxium.
Now refined.
Right. They convince... the pirates end up convincing them to use the coaxium. However, they're trying to trick the leader of the Red Tide to think that it's real, which it actually is real.
Surprisingly.
He did a whole twist there.
The way it worked is that Han and Chewie basically brought it in. Tobias made it sound like he's done. He doesn't want anything to do with it and leaves. Later, when they go up and try to give it to the leader, he looks at it and is basically like, "Huh, it looks like the real thing." Well, of course. I mean, we got it all refined. No, I mean, it does look like the real thing. How did you manage to fake it? And we all thought, "Oh no, oh great, they found out." They found out, and then we see Tobias literally walk in, and
Tobias was a narc.
Basically, but in a sense, he did it because he knew that having a target on his back from a big syndicate was not going to do it. So, It's a smuggler thing to do, one way or another.
Yeah.
And
well, once he found out that it was real, he went to take it. He brought Chewie with him
as extra muscle,
essentially. So then Solo, the leader of the Red Tide, and Kira, who was his girlfriend, are all in the room fighting.
It made it look like Kira was about to betray Han, and then she ends up does end up killing.
She ends up betraying the leader of the Red Tide.
And then that's
So
where
then,
things go a little crazy.
yeah. So she says she's going to go steal the diamonds and jewels that are in that room to go pay for a new ship so they can
But
fly
Han,
away together.
but Han needs to go and rescue first the
Rescue Chewie and
get the
the
coaxium.
coaxium. We end up seeing that she killed him because she wanted to be the leader of the Red Tide herself. And she calls Darth Maul and says that Beckett killed the leader of the Crimson Tide.
But Maul was not an idiot. He knows that that one
I'm
man.
sure.
Well, no, he does say one man cannot have done all this, and then he later does say Beckett and his associates will pay for this, and he needs to find them. So now that needs to be some explaining. For those that don't know, Darth Maul is in fact the Sith from Episode 1 that does manage to survive. How does he survive? Basically, it's this. We all know he gets cut in half, and he falls down this long, dark tunnel, which from Episode 4, if any one of us watch, or Return of the Jedi, actually, my bad on that one. On Return of the Jedi, we all thought, oh, that's just another reference to death. That's how all Sith kind of die. Yeah, no, he didn't die. He instead somehow fell down that shaft, landed into a junk planet, Lothar, I believe the name it was, and out of sheer will and the dark side of the Force answered, he survived. He obtained a spider body, but how did he get out of there is basically a planet known as I've forgotten the name of the planet.
A planet.
One of the planets he mentions while in the movie and the Solo is basically the home of the Night Sisters and the Night Brothers, his clan, and essentially. But the Night Sisters are actually in control. They sent one member of the Night Brothers, Savage Opress, to go and find him. Finds him insane, brings him back, he gets fixed up, and then they try to do a whole, let's take over everything. So secretly he wanted it to be his thing so that way he can go back under his master, Darth Sidious, but because of the whole rule of two, and we all know Sidious does eventually get Count Dooku as his apprentice, that was not a part of the rules, so he, in a sense, had to kill Maul. But instead of killing him, only managed to kill his brother. He kept Maul alive for his plans because he's still useful. But we never found out what. So either this one is Maul listening to Sidious to start the Shadow Collective for whatever purpose, which would make sense, full control of the entire galaxy. But at the same time, we all know how Sith are. They want to be the ones in charge. And Maul, being betrayed by not only his master, but then also feeling anger and revenge needed on Obi-Wan Kenobi for ruining his life, for cutting him in half. So as far as we know, this Shadow Collective is either Maul following orders from Sidious, or Maul legitly starting something so he can take over. But I mean, those of us that watched the new canon and saw from the cartoon Rebels, we all know where it ends, one way or another.
Yeah. So the thing that I found the most interesting in this movie was the relationship between him and Kira, because essentially Kira betrays Han at the end. And with that, like, it kind of shows why he couldn't trust the princess, that he couldn't really trust Leia at all. He couldn't even really trust Luke, because he can't trust anybody, because he ends up shooting Beckett to get the coaxium back.
By the way, yes, Han shot first, and they showed that in this one.
Yes,
probably
confirmed.
One of the only things that they really showed of the character, minus the fact that they also butchered the whole famous "I got a bad feeling about this" line.
Yeah.
They really butchered that line.
But he was going to shoot. Beckett was going to shoot, so he shot before he could even get that word in. But him not trusting people all starts in this origin story, and I thought they did it really well.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing this one wasn't that bad as far as like Disney format, but like I've noticed that with the main storyline with Star Wars, it's really starting to get more
predictable,
princessy. Like, I saw Chewie as a princess with his Porg sidekicks, you know? Like, you would say it was Rey, but honestly, Rey's sidekick is Chewie, and Chewie's sidekick is the Porg. So it's like, where does it end? So I'm glad that they pulled that back a little bit in this film. It still could have been a little better. It could have been more Star Wars-y, but I thought it was a good film.
I didn't think it was that bad, but I still do at least agree that it could use a little more work. Especially with the announcement that I saw on IGN where I'm not sure who it was. I think it was either a Disney CEO or whoever was in charge of Lucasfilm CEO under Disney said that they needed a lot more work. They need some improvement. Which, I mean, compared to Infinity War and all that other stuff that's been coming out recently, yeah, maybe. I mean, my personal opinion is that maybe instead of sticking a new canon, maybe they should bring it back and actually start up on something from Legends, something that people really want to see, or even the Old Republic. Every
Yeah.
every person in plays in Star Wars has a reference to the Old Republic, whether it be good, bad, or everything in between. I mean, think about it. We all like to see the idea of the Sith Empire, literally a Sith Empire versus the Jedi at the time, and that would be awesome to see. Or even this, like, for once, stormtroopers that are not clones at all, like they're the Republican shock troopers, the old Republic shock troopers actually were actually all individuals, different people, and if you see in some of their old video game trailers, they stood up against Sith. Like, one guy was getting blasted by Sith lightning, pulled out a knife, and literally was trying to charge, even though he's getting electrocuted right there. So those guys were definitely strong, if anything.
Yeah. So that's our wrap up on Solo and a little bit of background on that, as well as some Star Wars information. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Take care.